The Vedran Empire didn't just rule the galaxy, they owned it. Every star system, every inhabited world, every species that could think and breathe answered to them. For 10,000 years, they'd kept their iron grip tight, and nobody dared question why. But here's the thing about empires built on fear: they always have secrets buried so deep that even their own people forget they exist. Deep in the cold vacuum of space, orbiting a dying red giant, sat Kathos. From the outside, it looked like just another military installation: gray metal, flickering defense shields, the usual patrol ships making their rounds. But Kathos wasn't a normal fortress. It was a prison. Not for criminals or rebels, though. No, the Vedran Empire built Kathos for something far more dangerous. They called them chaos entities. Ancient beings that existed before the Empire, before most civilizations even learned to build fire. These creatures could bend reality, reshape matter with a thought, travel between dimensions like humans walk through doorways. The Vedrans spent centuries hunting them down, one by one, locking them away where nobody would ever find them. And in the deepest chamber of Kathos, behind walls of energy thick enough to stop a supernova, they kept their greatest prize. Valrix. The last dragon. Now, dragons in this galaxy weren't the fairy tale kind. They were beings of pure energy, born in the hearts of stars, older than planets. They used to guide younger species, teaching them, protecting them, helping civilizations take their first steps into the cosmos. Valrix's kind had shepherded hundreds of worlds into the galactic community. They were teachers, guardians, friends to anyone who needed them. The Vedrans saw them as threats. Valrix had been chained for 3,000 years. Quantum shackles held its physical form in stasis while psionic dampeners crushed its consciousness into a tiny, suffocating box. Worse still, the Empire had found a way to drain its essence, pure cosmic energy siphoned off bit by bit to power their war machines. Every battleship, every planet killer, every weapon they used to keep the galaxy under their boot ran on stolen dragon fire. The dragon couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't even scream. It just existed in endless, agonizing silence, feeling itself being slowly consumed. Nobody remembered Valrix existed anymore. The Vedran had erased every record, every story, every whisper of dragonkind from history. As far as the galaxy knew, chaos entities were mindless monsters that needed to be locked away for everyone's safety. The truth died with the last generation that remembered it. Then the Hope's journey dropped out of hyperspace at exactly the wrong coordinates. The colony ship was old, held together with patches and prayer, carrying 2,000 humans looking for a fresh start on the frontier. They'd been traveling for 8 months, following outdated star charts because that's all they could afford. When their navigation system glitched and spat them out near an unmapped sector, they thought they'd gotten lucky. Maybe they'd found an unclaimed system. Maybe this was their new home. The Vedran patrol fleet found them 3 hours later. Humanity wasn't unknown to the Empire, but they weren't important either. Just another species crawling out of their home system, still figuring out basic faster-than-light travel. The Vedran classified them as Category 9 primitives, useful for manual labor, too stupid to cause real trouble. The soldiers boarded the Hope's journey, stunned everyone unconscious, and dragged them off to processing centers. Most of the humans got shipped to mining colonies. Break rocks, sort ore, die when you're used up. Standard procedure. But there was one passenger the Vedran didn't know what to do with. Her name was Lily Foster. 8 years old, brown hair always tangled, a gap between her front teeth from where she'd lost one a month before the journey started. She'd been blind since birth, some genetic quirk the colony's medical bay couldn't fix with their limited equipment. Her parents worried she wouldn't adapt to frontier life, but Lily never seemed bothered. She told them she could see things just fine, just not the way other people did. The Vedran processing officer looked at her file, looked at the small girl standing there with unseeing eyes, and marked her as defective. Can't work the mines if you can't see. Can't operate machinery. Can't do anything useful. He almost had her eliminated. The Empire didn't waste resources on useless mouths to feed, but another officer suggested waste reclamation instead. Even a blind primitive could push a cleaning drone around empty corridors. They sent her to Kathos. Lily arrived on a supply shuttle with a shipment of equipment and 3 guards who didn't bother learning her name. They shoved a neural collar around her neck, standard for all primitives, prevents them from wandering into restricted areas, and handed her off to a maintenance overseer. The overseer, a bored Vedran technician counting days until his rotation ended, gave her the simplest job possible: guide the cleaning drone through Sublevel 7, empty the waste receptacles, don't touch anything. Sublevel 7 hadn't seen a living person in decades. Just miles of empty corridors, humming machinery, and the occasional automated defense system on standby. The perfect place to stick a useless primitive where she couldn't cause problems. Lily started pushing the cleaning drone down the main corridor, her hands light on the controls. She couldn't see the gray walls or the flickering lights or the warning symbols painted every few meters. But she could hear something the veteran couldn't. A song. It started faint, like a whisper at the edge of hearing. Not words exactly, but a melody that made her bones vibrate, that resonated in her chest like the lowest note of a church organ. Beautiful and terrible at the same time. Full of sadness so deep it made her want to cry, and rage so fierce it made her want to scream. The neural collar should have stopped her from wandering off. Should have delivered a painful shock the moment she left her assigned route. But when Lily turned down a side corridor, following the song, the collar stayed silent. Doors that should have been sealed slid open at her approach. Security scanners swept past her like she didn't exist. She walked deeper into Carthos, leaving the cleaning drone behind, following the melody that nobody else could hear. Through maintenance tunnels and storage bays and corridors that hadn't appeared on official maps for 1,000 years. The song grew stronger with every step, pulling her forward like a current. Finally, she reached a massive door at the end of a long hallway. The door opened. Beyond it lay a chamber so vast her footsteps echoed for seconds. And in the center, suspended in a sphere of crackling energy, was something that made Lily's breath catch in her throat. She couldn't see it with her eyes. But she felt it with every other sense she possessed. The vibrations it created in reality itself. The way space bent around it. The quantum frequencies radiating from its prison like ripples on water. And suddenly, Lily understood what she was perceiving. A dragon. Magnificent and ancient and dying, wrapped in chains of light that burned its essence away. Lily stepped closer. Her voice came out small in that enormous space. "I can hear you," she whispered. "I can hear your song." For the first time in 3,000 years, Valrix felt something other than pain and silence. It felt hope. The dragon had forgotten what hope felt like. 3,000 years is a long time to exist in nothing but darkness and pain, your essence being drained away drop by drop while machines hum indifferently around you. Valrix had stopped fighting the chains centuries ago. Fighting only made the dampeners squeeze tighter, made the extraction process more agonizing. So it had learned to simply endure, to retreat so far into itself that the universe outside barely registered anymore. Then a child's voice cut through the void like a blade of pure light. "I can hear you. I can hear your song." Valrix's consciousness surged against its bonds, not in violence but in desperate recognition. Someone heard it. After millennia of enforced silence, after the veteran had systematically erased every trace of dragonkind from galactic memory, someone was listening. The quantum shackles detected the energy spike and tightened automatically, sending fresh waves of agony through Valrix's form. The dragon didn't care. Pain was nothing compared to this impossible moment. Lily stood before the containment sphere, her head tilted like she was trying to hear a distant conversation. To her unseeing eyes, the dragon wasn't a physical thing at all. She perceived it as music, complex harmonics layered over each other, creating a symphony of existence that made her human senses struggle to interpret it. She could feel the sadness woven through every note. The loneliness. The slow, grinding despair of captivity stretching across centuries. "Why do they keep you here?" Lily asked softly. The psionic dampeners prevented Valrix from speaking, from projecting thoughts, from communicating in any conventional way. But Lily wasn't perceiving things conventionally. She was blind to light but hypersensitive to vibrations, to quantum fluctuations, to the subtle ways reality bent and shifted around powerful beings. And the dragon had spent 3,000 years learning to exist on the barest whisper of energy. It found a way to answer her. The song changed. New harmonics wove into the melody, and suddenly Lily wasn't just hearing music anymore. She was experiencing memories. Not seeing them, she'd never seen anything in her life, but feeling them, understanding them in ways that bypassed normal senses entirely. She felt what it was like to drift through the cosmic void as a being of pure starfire. Felt the joy of discovering a young civilization taking its first tentative steps toward the stars. Felt the purpose of guiding them, teaching them, protecting them through their vulnerable early years. And then she felt the veteran coming. Felt the betrayal when species the dragons had nurtured turned weapons against their teachers. Felt the agony of the hunt, watching her kind, his kind, hunted down one by one across the galaxy. Felt the final battle, the chains locking tight, the long darkness beginning. Lily's cheeks were wet with tears she didn't remember shedding. "They hurt you. They're still hurting you." The dragon's song shifted again, becoming something gentler. It wasn't trying to make her sad. It was just answering her question honestly. This was why the veteran kept it here. Because dragons were dangerous. Because they couldn't be controlled. Because an empire built on domination couldn't tolerate beings that taught freedom and cooperation. You have a name, Lily said suddenly. She didn't know how she knew that, but she did. Names were important. Names meant you were a person, not a thing. The veteran had tried to erase the dragon's name along with everything else about its kind, reducing it to just another chaos entity in their files. But names don't disappear that easily. They echo through reality itself if you know how to listen. Lily listened harder than she'd ever listened to anything in her short life. The harmonics crystallized in her mind, forming syllables that felt ancient and powerful and right. She spoke them aloud, her voice small but clear in the massive chamber. Valrix. The containment sphere exploded with light. Alarms screamed throughout Karthos. Energy readings spiked across every sensor in the sublevels. Automatic containment protocols engaged, flooding the chamber with additional suppression fields. The quantum shackles burned white-hot as they struggled to contain the surge of power coming from their prisoner. But Valrix wasn't fighting. It was awakening. There's power in names, real power that most species have forgotten. To name something is to acknowledge its existence as more than just an object or a resource. It's to see it as a being with identity, with personhood, with rights to exist beyond what others decide for it. The veteran had tried to unnamed Valrix, to reduce it to categorized threat level and energy output statistics. Lily had just undone 3,000 years of that erasure with a single word. A connection formed between them, thin as spider silk but stronger than steel. Valrix's vast, ancient consciousness touched the edges of Lily's mind, and the dragon felt something it hadn't expected. The child wasn't afraid. Most beings who perceived even a fraction of what Valrix truly was either fled in terror or knelt in worship. Lily just stood there, blind eyes staring at nothing, feeling the shape of an impossible friendship beginning to form. "Are you alone in there?" she asked. The question almost broke Valrix's heart. Yes. So terribly, completely alone. "Not anymore," Lily said firmly. "I'm here now. I'll visit you every day if they let me. I'll keep you company. Nobody should be alone like that." Commander Orthos burst into the chamber with a full security team 30 seconds later. His armor sensors had lit up like festival fireworks when the containment breach alarms triggered. He'd expected sabotage, maybe a reactor malfunction, possibly even an attack from a rival empire. What he found was a small human child standing calmly in front of the most dangerous prisoner in veteran custody, humming a lullaby. "Step away from the sphere," Orthos commanded, his weapon charging with a whine of building energy. Lily turned toward his voice. She couldn't see the gun pointed at her head, but she could feel the electromagnetic field building in its core. "I wasn't hurting anything. I was just talking. That entity is classified beyond your comprehension level. You've committed a security breach punishable by immediate execution." Orthos's finger tightened on the trigger. Standard protocol. No warnings. No second chances. But he hesitated. The containment sphere was still active, still showing stable readings despite the initial surge. More importantly, it was resonating. The chaos entity inside was responding to external stimulus for the first time since they'd locked it away. Orthos had read the files. Hundreds of scientists had spent centuries trying to find ways to communicate with, control, or weaponize the dragon. Every attempt had failed. The entity simply refused to engage, retreating into dormancy no matter what they tried. Now this blind primitive was making it sing. Orthos lowered his weapon slowly. "What did you do?" "I just said hello," Lily answered honestly. "And I learned his name. It's Valrix." "That's a nice name, isn't it?" The security team exchanged glances. Their commander stood frozen, mind racing through implications. If this human child could interact with the chaos entity, could make it respond, could potentially control it, the applications were limitless. The Empire's scientists would pay fortunes for this kind of breakthrough. "Take her to Observation Chamber 7, Orthos ordered. Place her in controlled containment adjacent to the entity's sphere. I want full monitoring, neural scans, energy field analysis, everything. And someone contact the research division. Tell them we may have finally found our interface." As the guards escorted Lily away, she twisted to look back toward the containment sphere. She couldn't see it, but she could still hear Valrix's song, fainter now but somehow warmer than before. "I'll come back," she called out. "I promise." The dragon's melody shifted one more time, and Lily smiled despite everything. Because she understood what that change meant. Valrix believed her. They put Lily in a clear box. That's what it felt like to her, anyway, a room with walls she could walk right up to but couldn't pass through, filled with machines that hummed and clicked and whirred constantly. The veteran called it an observation chamber. To Lily, it was just another cage, only this one had a window looking out at Valrix's prison. She didn't mind too much. At least she could still hear the dragon's song. Commander Orthos watched from the control room as his science team set up their equipment. Monitors filled with data streams, energy readings, neural pattern analyses, information flowing faster than any human eye could follow. They were recording everything, trying to understand how a primitive child with no psionic abilities whatsoever was communicating with a being that had resisted all their best efforts for millennia. Continue your interactions, Orthos had told Lily through the intercom. Speak to it. Make it respond. We need to understand the mechanism. What he didn't understand, what none of them understood, was that every conversation between Lily and Valrix made them stronger. The dragon had existed for eons before the first veteran crawled out of their primordial ocean. It understood things about reality that most species couldn't even conceptualize. And now it had something it hadn't possessed in 3,000 years, a willing partner. Someone who listened without fear or greed. Someone who saw it as a person rather than a weapon or a power source. Valrix began teaching Lily the old language. Not words, exactly. Dragons didn't communicate with crude vibrations of air or written symbols. They spoke in pure concepts, ideas expressed as quantum harmonics that resonated through the fabric of space itself. To the veteran instruments, it registered as random fluctuations, background noise, nothing worth noting. To Lily, it was like learning to read for the first time, except instead of letters on a page, she was reading the fundamental forces that held the universe together. She learned to hum equations describing gravity's pull. To whisper melodies that could make molecules dance apart. To sing harmonics that passed through solid matter like it wasn't even there. The monitoring equipment recorded it all as meaningless static. How are you doing that? Lily asked one day, fascinated by the way Valrix could make her perceive color she'd never seen, because she'd never seen anything, by shifting frequencies in ways that bypassed her useless eyes entirely. The dragon's response filled her mind with warmth. It wasn't doing anything. She was. Humans had always possessed this capability, buried deep in their evolutionary code. They were pattern recognizers, harmony seekers, natural-born bridge builders between different ways of thinking. Lily's blindness had simply forced her to develop senses that most humans never knew they had. So I'm not broken? Lily had always wondered, hearing her parents whisper worries late at night. Never broken, Valrix assured her. Just different. And different was exactly what the galaxy needed. 3 weeks passed. Then 4. The veteran scientists grew frustrated as their data yielded nothing actionable. The child and the entity clearly communicated, but how? Every scan showed Lily as completely normal, no psionic abilities, no genetic anomalies, no cybernetic implants. Just an ordinary human child sitting in a room, humming to herself. They didn't see the revolution brewing in that humming. Meanwhile, 200 light-years away in the Thanos mining colony, Lily's father was planning something desperate. Dr. Jack Foster had been a university professor before signing up for the colony mission. Taught xenobiology to undergraduates who mostly just wanted easy credits. He wasn't a fighter. Wasn't brave. Wasn't the kind of man who started rebellions. But they'd taken his daughter, and nobody, human or alien, could tell him where she was or if she was even alive. So he became someone different. The veteran made a critical mistake with humanity. They assumed that primitives were stupid, that Category 9 species couldn't possibly outsmart an empire with 10,000 years of technological superiority. They put the humans to work breaking rocks and sorting ore and maintaining equipment, gave them just enough food to stay functional, and never bothered posting serious guards because what could primitives possibly do? They forgot that humans had spent their entire evolutionary history as persistence hunters. Patient. Adaptable. Willing to chase prey for days until it collapsed from exhaustion. And when you're the prey being hunted, that's a terrifying thing to forget. Jack started small. A whispered conversation in the mess hall. A stolen datapad passed between work shifts. A maintenance worker accidentally leaving a secure door unlocked. The veteran had communication networks running through every facility, and they never imagined primitives could learn to use them. But humans had gone from basic radio to quantum encryption in less than 2 centuries. Figuring out alien technology was just a matter of time and motivation. Jack had plenty of both. Within 3 months, he'd established contact with human workers in 12 different mining facilities. They created a network using stolen equipment, coded messages hidden in work reports, and the kind of creative problem-solving that evolution favors in species that started out hunting animals 10 times their size with nothing but pointed sticks. The network had a single purpose: find the missing children, and get them back. It took another month before Jack finally got a lead. A veteran supply clerk, drunk on whatever passed for alcohol in his species, mentioned to a co-worker that the fortress moon Carthos had received an unusual primitive assignment. A defective child. Waste reclamation duty. Jack knew immediately. Lily. His baby girl, alone on a military fortress, probably terrified. He called a meeting of the network's core members, 37 humans from different colonies, different backgrounds, united by desperation and rage. They gathered in a maintenance tunnel deep enough that sensors couldn't reach, and Jack laid out a plan that everyone agreed was completely insane. "We're going to steal a ship," he said. "Fly it to Carthos. Get our people out." "That's suicide," someone pointed out. "That fortress has defenses that could vaporize a battle fleet." "I know." Jack's voice was steady despite the fear churning in his gut. "But we're not a battle fleet. We're just primitives. They won't see us coming until it's too late." "And then what? Even if we get in, how do we get out?" Jack didn't have an answer for that. The plan had 1,000 holes, 1,000,000 ways to fail, and approximately 0 chance of success. But he was doing it anyway, because the alternative was leaving his daughter in enemy hands forever. "I'm going," he said simply. "Anyone who wants to join me, I'll be grateful. Anyone who doesn't, I understand completely." All 37 of them volunteered. Back on Carthos, Lily was learning something important from Valrix. The dragon showed her the quantum shackles, let her perceive them the way it did, not as unbreakable chains, but as a complex system with patterns and rhythms and, critically, weaknesses. "They designed these to contain you fighting back," Lily said slowly, understanding dawning. "They expect resistance. They expect you to push against them with power." "Exactly," Valrix confirmed. The shackles measured energy output, detected force applied against them, and adjusted their containment fields accordingly. The harder you fought, the tighter they squeezed. It was elegant engineering, really. Unbreakable as long as you played by their rules. "So what if you don't fight?" Lily asked. "What if you just flow around them instead?" The dragon's song filled with something that might have been laughter if laughter could reshape reality. "You understand. The shackles had a fatal flaw. They were designed to contain a dragon working alone, fighting in isolation. They were never designed to contain a dragon working in harmony with something else, distributing the load, sharing the burden." Valrix asked Lily a question that would change everything. "Do you trust me?" Lily thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. She was 8 years old, trapped on an alien fortress, used as a lab experiment by an empire that saw her as barely sentient. The dragon was the only friend she had in the universe. "Yes," she said. "I trust you." "Then let's become something they can't measure," Valrix sang. "Something they can't contain. Let's become something new." The melding began that night, slow and careful, while the veteran scientists slept and their instruments recorded nothing but baseline readings. Valrix's consciousness started flowing through Lily like light through crystal, while her human perspective, her creativity, her emotional depth, her stubborn refusal to accept impossible circumstances, gave the ancient dragon something it had lost millennia ago: hope. The quantum shackles, sensing no resistance, no power surge, no energy spikes, registered everything as perfectly stable. They had no way to detect what was really happening. They were becoming one. The transformation happened so gradually that nobody noticed. Not the scientists monitoring Lily around the clock, not the automated systems tracking every energy fluctuation in Valrix's prison, not even Commander Orthos who reviewed the daily reports with increasing frustration at their lack of progress. But Lily noticed. She felt herself changing in ways she couldn't quite explain. Her perception of reality was expanding. She'd always been able to hear things others couldn't, feel vibrations in the air, sense the electromagnetic fields around electronic devices. Now those abilities were growing exponentially. She could feel the atomic structure of the walls around her observation chamber. Could sense the neural patterns of the veteran guards 3 floors above. Could perceive the quantum probabilities collapsing into reality with every passing microsecond. And Valrix, the dragon's vast, ancient consciousness was learning what it meant to be human. Learning about stubborn hope in the face of impossible odds. About the fierce love parents had for their children. About the way humans built communities and friendships even in the darkest circumstances. The dragon had spent 3,000 years in isolation, and now it was experiencing connection again through Lily's eyes, or rather, through her entire way of experiencing the universe. They were neither dragon nor human anymore. They were both. Something new. Something the Vedran Empire had no protocols for, no weapons designed to counter, no understanding of how to contain. The quantum shackles registered stable containment. After all, Valrix wasn't fighting them. The dragon's essence was simply redistributing itself, flowing through quantum foam, settling into the spaces between Lily's cells like starlight filling cracks in a broken vessel. The shackles had nothing to grab onto, no resistance to measure and suppress. Jack Foster's rebellion began on a Tuesday morning, though time didn't mean much when you lived underground mining asteroids for 18 hours a day. The signal went out through the hidden network, now. Across 12 mining facilities in 4 different star systems, human workers launched coordinated sabotage. Nothing fancy, they didn't have access to weapons or military equipment. But humans had been breaking things creatively since the first cavemen figured out that the right rock could crack open the wrong skull. Coolant systems mysteriously failed. Power conduits developed shorts. Automated machinery started experiencing catastrophic malfunctions that safety inspectors would later determine were statistically impossible. The Vedran scrambled to contain the chaos, pulling guards from standard patrols to deal with the cascading disasters. That's when Jack and his team made their move. They'd been working maintenance on a supply hauler for 3 weeks, supposedly repairing its atmospheric processes. What they'd actually been doing was gutting the safety systems, rerouting the fuel lines, and turning the entire ship into a barely controlled bomb with a guidance system. 37 humans crammed into the cargo hold, armed with improvised weapons, pipes, mining tools, a few stolen shock batons, and absolutely nothing resembling a realistic plan. "This is completely insane," muttered Tom Chen, a former construction worker who'd become Jack's second-in-command through sheer competence at breaking things quietly. "Yep," Jack agreed, strapping himself into the pilot's seat. He'd learned to fly by watching Vedran pilots and reading stolen manuals. He had approximately 20 hours of actual experience. "Everyone ready to die?" "Been ready since they took my kids," someone called from the back. Jack engaged the engines. The hauler lurched into space with all the grace of a drunk elephant, alarms screaming about the dozen safety violations currently in progress. Vedran Traffic Control immediately started broadcasting demands that they return to dock. Jack aimed the ship at Carthos and pushed the engines to maximum. "Unauthorized vessel, you are ordered to stop immediately or you will be destroyed," the control officer announced. "Yeah, I figured," Jack muttered, watching defense platforms track his approach. He waited until the last possible second, until weapons were charged and targeting locks were solid, then he did something the Vedran never expected. He hit the distress beacon. Suddenly the hauler was broadcasting emergency codes: critical systems failure, life support failing, crew dying, requesting immediate emergency docking permission. The Vedran hesitated. Protocols said you didn't blow up ships broadcasting legitimate distress signals. But protocols also said unauthorized vessels approaching military installations were hostile by definition. In that 3-second hesitation, Jack crashed the hauler into Carthos's docking bay at roughly 400 meters per second. The explosion took out half the docking facility and shredded the hauler into burning metal. 15 of Jack's team died instantly. The rest stumbled out of the wreckage through sheer blood-minded determination, firing stolen weapons at shocked Vedran personnel who'd expected routine supply deliveries, not a primitive suicide attack. "Go, go, go!" Jack screamed, leading the charge deeper into the fortress. They had maybe 5 minutes before organized resistance arrived. 5 minutes to find the detention levels and somehow locate Lily in a facility the size of a small city. It should have been impossible. By every logical measure, they were already dead. But humans don't do logic when their children are at stake. 3 levels down, Lily's head snapped up. She'd felt the explosion, perceived the shockwave rippling through Carthos's structure, sensed the familiar neural patterns of human minds suddenly appearing on the fortress. One pattern in particular made her heart leap. "Dad," she whispered. Valrix felt her surge of emotion and understood immediately. Family. The human pack-bonding instinct, stronger than any survival drive. The dragon's consciousness wrapped around Lily's like protective wings. "Do you want to go to him?" "Yes. But we're locked in." The dragon's response was almost amused. "Are we?" Lily stood up, and for the first time, she opened her eyes in a way she never had before. She still couldn't see light, her biological eyes simply didn't work that way. But now she could perceive everything else. The electromagnetic spectrum laid out like a rainbow of information. The gravitational eddies created by every piece of matter in the facility. The quantum states of every atom in her observation chamber. She sang. Not with her voice, but with the harmonics Valrix had taught her, channeled through human vocal cords and amplified by dragon consciousness until the sound resonated on frequencies the veteran couldn't even detect. The walls didn't break. They didn't explode or melt or shatter. They simply stopped being solid. Molecular bonds destabilized and reformed into configurations that allowed Lily to walk straight through them like they were made of smoke. Alarms screamed. Every sensor in the sublevels lit up like fireworks. Commander Orthos was in the command center when the impossible readings started flooding in. The Chaos Entity's containment is failing, a technician shouted. Impossible, I'm reading stable, Orthos stopped. The containment sphere showed green across the board. Stable. Contained. No energy spikes. But the security feed showed Lily's observation chamber was empty, walls intact, no visible breach. Then he saw the thermal imaging. A small heat signature moving through the fortress, passing through sealed bulkheads like they didn't exist. Lock down everything. Orthos roared. Deploy all security teams to sublevel. Lily's voice echoed through every speaker in Carthos. It shouldn't have been possible, she wasn't connected to the communication system. But Valrix understood electromagnetic signals the way humans understood breathing, and now Lily did too. I'm going to my father, she said simply. Please don't try to stop me. I don't want to hurt anyone. The dragon's power flowed through her words, making them vibrate with harmonics that caused veteran neural implants to screech with feedback. Orthos clutched his head as pain lanced through his augmented nervous system. Every soldier wearing enhanced armor suddenly found their systems malfunctioning, feedback loops causing their own technology to turn against them. 3 levels up, Jack and his survivors were pinned down by veteran security forces. They'd made it farther than anyone had a right to expect, pure desperation and the element of surprise carrying them through 2 firefights they should have lost. But now they were trapped in a corridor junction with enemies on 3 sides and ammunition running critically low. This is it, Tom said, checking his stolen weapon. 3 shots left. Been an honor, Jack. Likewise. Jack prepared for the final rush. At least he tried. At least Lily would know he'd come for her, even if he died before. The veteran weapons dissolved. Not exploded. Not malfunctioned. Dissolved. The molecular bonds holding them together simply came apart, metal and composite materials breaking down into component atoms that drifted away like smoke. 20 veteran soldiers stood frozen, staring at their empty hands in complete incomprehension. Then Lily walked around the corner. She looked the same, small 8-year-old girl in an ill-fitting prison jumpsuit, messy brown hair, blind eyes staring at nothing. But she moved differently now, like gravity was more of a suggestion than a law. And the air around her shimmered with barely visible energy, reality itself bending to accommodate her presence. Hi, Dad, she said, and smiled the same gap-toed smile he remembered from before the Empire took everything. Jack's weapon clattered to the floor. Lily? Baby, is that really you? It's me. And also Valrix. We're kind of both now. She tilted her head. We should probably leave. Commander Orthos is about to do something really stupid. In the command center, Orthos had already done it. His hand slammed down on the fortress's ultimate failsafe, a reality bomb designed to collapse localized spacetime rather than allow a chaos entity to escape. 3 minutes until detonation. Enough time to evacuate essential personnel. Nowhere near enough time for primitives trapped deep in the sublevels. A countdown appeared on every screen in Carthos. Jack saw it and felt his blood turn to ice. Can you get us out? He asked his daughter. Lily was quiet for a moment, conferring with Valrix. Then she smiled again, and this time there was something ancient and powerful behind that childish expression. We can do better than that. The countdown ticked toward 0. 2 minutes and 43 seconds until the reality bomb turned everything within a 3 light-minute radius into collapsed spacetime, a pocket of nothing that would erase Carthos and everyone on it from existence. Commander Orthos watched the timer from his command shuttle, already accelerating away from the fortress moon. Essential personnel were evacuating in controlled panic, cramming into every available ship. The primitives and their chaos entity would be dead soon. The loss of Carthos hurt. 10,000 years of research, irreplaceable artifacts, other contained entities, but better that than letting Valrix loose on the galaxy. He'd made the hard choice. The right choice. The Empire would understand. Deep in Carthos's core, Lily stood perfectly still while chaos erupted around her. Veteran personnel sprinted past, desperately trying to reach evacuation points. Automated systems were already shutting down, preserving power for the final detonation. Emergency lighting bathed everything in red. Jack grabbed his daughter's shoulder. "Lily, we need to move. Now." "It's okay, Dad." Her voice was calm, almost dreamy. "Valrix is showing me something. The bomb isn't designed to destroy. It's designed to compress. To fold space in on itself." "Great. Fascinating. We still need to. What if we unfold it instead?" The dragon's consciousness surged through Lily like a tide of starfire. Valrix had spent 3,000 years imprisoned in this facility, forced to watch as the veteran drained its essence to power their war machine. But imprisonment had given the dragon something the veteran never anticipated: intimate knowledge of their technology. Every system, every circuit, every quantum processor that kept Kathos running, Valrix had felt them all, studied them, understood them more deeply than their own creators. The reality bomb was brilliant engineering. It would create a localized singularity, crushing matter and energy into a point of infinite density before space-time snapped back like a rubber band, erasing everything that had existed there. Elegant. Efficient. Irreversible. Unless you understood reality the way a dragon did. Lily raised her hands. She still couldn't see anything with her eyes, but she perceived the bomb at the fortress's core with perfect clarity, a sphere of exotic matter wrapped in quantum field generators, countdown at 2 minutes and 9 seconds, energy building toward critical threshold. She sang. The melody that came out of her was impossible to describe in human terms. It existed on frequencies that normal ears couldn't hear, in dimensions that normal physics didn't acknowledge. The song wrapped around the reality bomb like gentle hands cradling something fragile, and it began to change the weapon's fundamental purpose. Compression became expansion. Destruction became liberation. Tom Chen, still standing beside Jack with his mouth hanging open, finally found his voice. Is she disarming a reality bomb by humming at it?" "I think so," Jack whispered. "I genuinely think so." 1 minute 47 seconds. All across Kathos, impossible things started happening. Doors that had been sealed for centuries suddenly opened. Containment fields that had held for millennia flickered and failed. Security systems recognized authorization codes that didn't exist in any database. The fortress wasn't malfunctioning, it was obeying new commands, spoken in a language older than the Vedran Empire. In Cell Block 7, something that looked like living shadow flowed through suddenly open bars, tasting freedom for the first time in 4,000 years. In Sublevel 12, a being made of crystallized time stepped out of stasis and stretched limbs that bent causality just by moving. In the deepest vault, something without shape or name simply ceased to be imprisoned and began to be something else entirely. The chaos entities were waking up. All of them. Every prisoner the Empire had locked away in Kathos, every being they'd classified as too dangerous to exist freely in the galaxy. Valrix's song was calling them, and the reality bomb's energy, instead of destroying, was breaking chains. 59 seconds. Commander Orthos saw the readings from his fleeing shuttle and felt his blood freeze. That's not possible. The containment failures, they're cascading across the entire facility. How? His sensor officer's voice shook. Sir, the chaos entity. It's not contained anymore. It's everywhere. Explain. I can't, sir. The readings don't make sense. It's like the entity has distributed itself across the entire fortress. No, wait, the officer's face went pale. Sir, I'm reading the entity's signature mixed with human neural patterns. They've merged somehow. The primitive child and the dragon are the same being now. Orthos stared at the data, understanding and horror dawning in equal measure. They hadn't created an interface to control the dragon. They'd given it a partner. A human partner with all the creativity, adaptability, and stubborn refusal to quit that made humanity so unexpectedly dangerous. 31 seconds. Lily's song reached a crescendo. The reality bomb's energy, fully inverted now, pulsed outward in a wave that didn't destroy matter but reshaped purpose. Every chain designed to hold, every cell meant to imprison, every system built to suppress and contain, all of it transformed in an instant. Kathos wasn't a prison anymore. It was a doorway opening wide. The dragon's voice spoke through Lily, audible to every being in the facility, freed entities, fleeing Vedran, desperate humans, words that resonated with power enough to shake atoms apart. 3,000 years you kept me chained. 3,000 years you stole my fire to fuel your wars. I could burn you all to ash for that. The others, and here the dragon's consciousness touched the dozens of freed entities stirring throughout Kathos, they want revenge. They want to make you suffer as you made them suffer. The countdown hit 10 seconds. 9. 8. But this child showed me something I'd forgotten, Valrix continued, gentler now. She showed me that the answer to chains isn't more chains. The answer to cruelty isn't more cruelty. She offered friendship when she could have offered nothing. She gave kindness when she had every reason to be afraid. 3. 2. So we're going to show you what freedom really means. And then we're going to leave you to think about what you've done. 1. The reality bomb detonated, but instead of collapse, it bloomed. Space-time didn't fold inward, it expanded outward in a wave of pure liberation. The energy that should have destroyed Kathos instead swept across it like a tide, and everywhere it touched, bonds broke. Not just physical chains but the fundamental quantum locks the veteran had used to imprison their captives. Every chaos entity felt their shackles dissolve simultaneously. They could have rampaged. Could have torn the fortress apart, killed every veteran in sight, begun a campaign of revenge that would burn across the galaxy. But they saw what Valrix and Lily had become. Saw the partnership, the cooperation, the way human determination and dragon wisdom had created something neither could achieve alone. And they hesitated. A being of pure crystallized time spoke, its voice causing temporal echoes. Why did you spare them, Valrix? After everything they did? Because she asked me to, the dragon replied through Lily's smile. Because this child, this human, believes that people can change. That even empires built on cruelty can learn better. And I've lived long enough to know that hope is more powerful than revenge. The entities conferred in languages that predated spoken word. Then, one by one, they made their choice. Not rampage. Not revenge. They would wait. They would watch. They would see what this strange partnership between dragon and human might accomplish. Valrix's consciousness flowed fully into Lily, and together they rose from Kathos' surface on wings of starfire that finally, gloriously flew free. The dragon's body reformed around her, not separate anymore, but merged, a being that was both ancient power and human heart. Jack and the other humans were lifted gently in fields of protective energy, carried away from the dying fortress. Behind them, Kathos collapsed, not from the bomb, but simply from structural failure as all its systems simultaneously stopped functioning. The veteran evacuees watched in horror as their greatest prison crumbled into debris. And then they heard it. Every veteran ship, every communication network, every receiver in the Empire's vast territory picked up the same signal simultaneously. Valrix's song. The dragon song that hadn't echoed across the galaxy in 3,000 years. But this time it wasn't alone. Woven through the ancient harmonics were human words, a child's voice singing with the power of stars. We're free. All of us. And we remember everything you did. The message was clear. The age of chains had ended. The chaos entities were loose again, but they weren't mindless monsters, they were ancient beings who'd chosen mercy when they could have chosen annihilation. And they'd made that choice because a blind human child had shown them what the veteran empire never could. That strength didn't come from domination, but from connection. Within hours, reports flooded into the veteran capital from across the galaxy. Dragons appearing in orbit around oppressed worlds. Shadow beings liberating labor camps. Entities of pure energy disrupting weapons facilities without harming the workers inside. The freed prisoners weren't attacking, they were dismantling the Empire's infrastructure of cruelty piece by piece. And everywhere they went, they were accompanied by humans. The species the veteran had dismissed as primitives were suddenly at the center of a cosmic revolution, their natural talent for cooperation and bridge building making them perfect partners for beings the Empire had feared for millennia. Commander Orthos sat in his shuttle, watching sensor readings of impossible things happening across dozens of systems. His career was over. Possibly his life. He'd lost the Empire's most valuable prisoner and unleashed exactly the catastrophe they'd spent 10,000 years preventing. But as he watched a dragon, partnered with a human crew, peacefully escort a slave transport to freedom, he felt something he'd never experienced before. Doubt. What if they'd been wrong all along? What if the chaos entities were never the real threat? Lily stood, floated, really, above the debris field that used to be Kathos, her father beside her, wrapped in Valrix's protective embrace. Other freed entities circled them like a constellation of impossible beings, waiting to see what would happen next. What now? Jack asked his daughter, still trying to process that she was somehow also an ancient dragon. Lily smiled, and starlight danced in her blind eyes. Now we show the galaxy what happens when you choose friendship over fear. When you build bridges instead of prisons. When you speak names with love instead of trying to erase them. The dragon's consciousness rumbled agreement through her words. Now we teach them what we should have taught them millennia ago, that the universe is big enough for everyone. That power shared is stronger than power hoarded. That even the smallest voice, and here Valrix's love for the brave child who'd whispered its name filled every syllable, can change everything. Across the galaxy, the Vedran Empire began to crumble. Not through violence, but through the simple realization that their entire civilization had been built on a lie. The Age of Songs had truly begun. And humanity, the species nobody had taken seriously, stood at its heart, proof that sometimes the greatest strength comes from those brave enough to offer kindness to monsters. Because maybe, just maybe, there were never any monsters at all. Just people nobody had bothered to understand.